Welcome back to Matriarch Alchemy. I'm Allie.
And I'm Amanda. I wanted to say, Allie and I have been trying to get all these core issues kind of in there. You guys get a little of our personality and things that are going on in the world and things women are talking about. But we are going to be starting soon to be having some guests and getting a little more educational, a little more science because I have a lot of really great opportunity with science with Allie's education and some of our friends. So we're hoping it'll be a little bit more fun and interesting. Maybe you can learn something.
Yeah.
So today,
Yeah, I actually was thinking we could talk a little bit about adoption and maybe kind of influences on genetics, personality, because I
mhm,
think you have an interesting story. I don't know if you kind of want to introduce kind of what you've known, how you
yeah,
found out you were adopted, and kind of where you got to today.
okay, yeah, I know. So the quickie version of my adoption is my parents were 14 and 15 years old when they had me. They were at a sleepover and tried the deed for the first time. So they were very shocked and had no idea this could even happen. My mother was actually in foster care, and so she wasn't really given a choice about what to do. She at 14 years old, right? She's probably in eighth grade,
Yeah.
just tiny, and so
Mhm.
um, I never had any resentment personally towards that because I knew that part of the story. I knew they were really young, and so I realized that was very reasonable. And that, gosh, I remember being 14 in school and going,
Same.
no way. First of all, I was so tiny and skinny, and I weighed probably 89 pounds. And I was like, how on earth could I deliver
Yeah.
another human,
I
right? Oh
remember
my gosh.
I remember being in eighth grade and being like, my grandma is pregnant right now. That's terrifying.
Well, and then it also speaks to maybe the kind of trauma that she's probably had because that's
Right.
terrifying, right? And then also being separated from her own mother who was having some issues, and then how her foster parents were is a whole other thing. So then I didn't know them until I was 21 years old. And so I was insanely curious. And so I had asked my adoptive parents if I could try to reach out and try to figure out who they were. Just
Hmm.
want to know who they were and what they look like, who I look like, have my medical history. I didn't look at it very deeply at that age because I was only 21.
Mm.
But, obviously as a mother giving up a child, it's a very different experience from that side. And it took me having a child, having you, to understand more like what she had
I've
gone
gone through.
through. Yeah. And I probably gained more empathy to that situation.
Mm.
But we've kind of had them in and out, but mostly just my birth mother and I still kind of maintain a relationship, friendship, whatever.
Yeah.
They're in a different state, so they're not nearby. But I've let her be full on grandma to my kids too. So it's fun for them to have another grandma. Like, how
Grandma.
nice. And she's
Grandma.
very young. And so, she can do things differently than maybe some of my older adopted parents could do. But, um, I don't know, was there any more specific questions you wanted me to answer about
So you knew you were
any of it?
adopted like the whole time you were growing up, right? Never
Yeah,
was hidden or.
however it happened, I don't remember. So I
Mm.
feel like I've always known.
Okay.
So it wasn't like a secret to me. It wasn't thrust on me one day as a shock, which I think
Right.
is kind of terrible. I just don't know. I
Yeah.
know some people that I think it was kind of hidden from them.
Yeah.
And if you find that out at 20, 30 years old, that's really just going to rock your personhood, to your core. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, who am I? What's going on? What do I trust?
I feel like I hear a lot about that from like kids who were egg or sperm donors and never knew because they see pictures of their mom pregnant. They're like, oh, no big deal, didn't even think about it. And then as they're older, they find out and it's like a big shock to them because they have like a genetic thing that happens or
Oh,
whatever. So
like
I
for
think that's,
infertility, you mean? Because you
well,
said they were donors. So I was
well,
like,
if no,
what?
if they had
The
like donor
parents.
conceived
Yeah.
children, so like their parents had an egg donor or sperm donor,
Yeah.
and they find out later in life, it's like a big shock. Like, why did you lie to me? So I think that is a big thing that I
That's something you got to talk to them about at some point, also for just their
health.
genetic information and your medical history.
Yeah.
I would want to know.
Well, I think it's important. just like
But
being adopted, I think it's important
I
to
don't think
know
it's
that you
that
might have,
weird.
you know,
Hey, you're kind of adopted.
you're like
You're,
half
I
adopted,
carried you, but yeah,
but you're still my kid.
I found you in a trash can.
So I guess kind of before you ever met your parents or your birth parents, was it kind of like what kind of fears or thoughts did you have about it?
Like about meeting them or who they were,
Yeah, I guess maybe just like how
or how did I personally feel about being adopted? Is
I
that what you
think
mean?
all, I mean, kind
All
of
of it.
encompassing all of it.
I never had it personally any negative thoughts about being adopted. Like,
Mm,
however, my older sibling, I think, there was another person that was adopted from another genetic family that had a very different reaction and feeling to it, and clearly feels very hurt and abandoned by their birth mother, and like seemed to be, if this person really has resentment towards all women because of this situation. Like, I think there's a really deep hurt there. And I think some people deal with that.
I think that's a very common thing with adoption, from what I've heard from others, is like a fear of abandonment that a lot of them have, or
Mhm.
anger towards
Mhm.
their birth parents for the
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
I think that's a really common feeling. And that is interesting because even if they were adopted as a little baby, it's like you still have feelings. And, a lot of things can
Mm.
influence the way your body or brain reacts to things.
Yeah. No, it's definitely there for some people. I saw a really odd post where some people who had, I think what leads to this is how your family situation was. So if you had more abuse or didn't have a great situation in your adopted family,
Yeah.
there's going to be more different feelings, like people that feel really ripped away from their birth family, or like say if you were adopted as an older child, like you were brought out of abuse. I've noticed people go through different experiences. So we've had an all around really positive experience for overall for what I dealt with them and meeting them, and you know being raised by professional parents that took care of me and whatnot. I mean, yeah, our family wasn't perfect. We definitely dealt with things because my older adopted sibling had mental health issues. And the other issue then is you just have an insane curiosity. So I'd say I was just always really, really curious.
Mm,
Like,
okay.
oh, like I really wondered who he looked like.
Yeah, I think
Or I
it was
wondered
like,
we would fantasize of who they are. And it's funny because I remember having this conversation where the interpretation of this was hurtful because I said something about the letdown. So you can think about as it's not a disappointment
right,
in finding them. It's like that you've spent 20 years fantasizing
of who they could be, or
about and then like joking with other kids, and they're like, "Oh, you look like Morgan Fairchild. You look like this actress." Like,
right.
obviously this actress did not give me up for adoption. But who
But
knows?
it's a mystery.
Like,
It is a
so there's a
mystery.
mystery to be solved, and then when the mystery's over, it's like you've gotten out of the escape room. There's no more fantasizing about what it could be.
Right.
And I always talk about it as like there is a letdown. And in books they talk about that feeling, like because you're not curious and wondering anymore. And it's
Mm,
not disappointment, but all of that wondering is just
dissipated.
instantly gone,
Yeah.
right? So that's a weird feeling. I think
Oh,
that's
that makes sense.
so definitely I would say for me, that was the gist of the whole thing. And then meeting them, I was kind of like flippant about the whole thing because I was like 21 years old. Like I didn't have any kids, so I didn't really know what it'd be like. And I wasn't trying to replace my family.
Right. I think that's what a lot of like people on the outside, or like maybe even like adoptive parents, have a fear of, is that like their child is going to want to replace them with their birth family later on, or they're like, oh, you're not really my
Mm.
parents. Like I've heard that over and over from other kids.
I've said that when I'm mad at when I was in middle school. I would tell my dad, "Well, you're not my dad," and he would laugh. And I would go, "I was waiting for that."
But um
Well,
I do think like a lot of the people that I've known who are adopted, it's not that they want to replace anybody. It's
hmm
more of like just the curiosity that you have for the what ifs or
Well, and then
why.
some people, like, I know they've gone through where maybe their adoptive parent passed away and they do want like that sense of family, and then they seek out and wonder. And then I've had people that where a lot of theirs have passed away, like on both sides. And
Yeah.
so just how they feel about any of that. And it's just everybody has a really unique story. And I do think you kind of just have to stay open minded of not knowing what you're going to find. And you also have to respect that they may not want to be contacted, and they may not be healed. That might be too big of a skeleton in their closet. Like the situation may be too detrimental for their current life, but then they also could be really horrifically sad about that later, that they did that and they denied you. So I mean, they could even come back later.
And it can be like so many different reactions, and it just, I think, from hearing everybody is,
Yeah,
you
I've
know,
heard a lot of different stories. I have a really good story, and it's really easy compared to what some other people have been through. So I know that I'm blessed in that I haven't had to deal with some worse things.
yeah,
We have a extended family member that was adopted when she was a small child, but she has a story, and there was relatively horrific abuse was happening to her as a baby when she was taken away from her family. And it's like I hear these, they're very personal, stories of people that are very close to us.
yeah. And I think remembering that, like, especially parents who are giving up a child for adoption, it wasn't an easy decision that any of them made. I mean, I'm
No.
sure as a mother, you can only imagine being pregnant and having those thoughts. Like, if you were to think about that, that would be,
And going home from the hospital without the baby,
I mean, your body's already at like
and
a
you're
low
dealing with
of
the hormone drop, which is
hormones.
horrible.
I mean, add
That's a
that on
hard
to
time
like
anyway.
postpartum depression and then coming
Yeah.
up with those decisions because it was just not in the cards for you. I mean, a
Well,
lot
I
of
think for
respect.
birth moms, a lot of the fear is that baby safe? Is my baby going to be well taken care of?
Yeah.
And they used to do a lot of very secretive closed adoptions because people wanted it to be a secret. They didn't want anyone to know they had a baby for whatever reason. And then the birth families also kind of wanted that privacy. So people are being a lot more open now because now we can keep an eye on. I'm picking who's going to watch this child, and I'm picking like someone that maybe will still send me pictures every year of how they're doing or
Yeah.
updates, and maybe come back and say maybe I can get to know them later, like, because this is really hard.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make the decision, like, and so people are choosing each other better, which I think is really nice.
I think a lot of the stories I hear now are just like so beautiful where it's like, oh, the mom or dad is still in their life. And it's like an extra aunt. That's just a bonus aunt. Or, I've heard kids be like, oh, that's my bonus mom. Like,
What's funny is a lot of families now, it's like you're actually being raised by a family member. They're like, oh, I never realized like my grandma or my sister was actually my mom, or my cousin was my mom. And I was like, oh
yeah.
my gosh. But they kind of keep it a secret. And I'm like, huh, it's fascinating stories out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
So how did you go about like finding your parent or your birth parents?
so when I was 21, this was like right when the internet was born. So this is like AOL chat room, dial up internet, making that sound where we all know this now. And there really wasn't much to search or anything like that. So I wrote a letter to the court of the state that I had my adoption through,
Okay.
signed by me and my adoptive parents, saying we all agreed on our side. Can we open the file?
Did your parents have
We
a
closed
closed?
adoption.
Okay.
Yeah. We knew some like very basic facts about each other. And so one of my uncles worked in the city, in the county courthouse
Mm-hmm.
for family services. So he made sure this judge read my letter and actually made sure he pushed it into getting seen. And then, so the judge agreed and granted my request. So then this woman called me, and she was an advocate for the court.
Mm.
So she calls me on the phone, on the landline, long ago, and said, okay, so it's approved in the sense of that I'm allowed to go seek them out and get asked for their approval. And I don't know. She goes, I don't know how long it'll take me to find them. They may say no. And I was like, okay. I was totally had prepared, and I was okay. And I was like, they could be dead for all I know. Like, I'm okay with
Right.
I'm gonna find out, but I'm okay with any scenario. And they may say no.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And she's like, it could take me like at least a couple months, whatever. A couple weeks later, she calls me again. Okay, I have everyone's approval. And I'm like, what? I was at my office, in my real estate office, writing a contract. And I'm like, oh my God,
Oh gosh.
what? And she just gives me their name, their address, and their phone numbers. And I was like, what? That's it? You're just going to give it to
Okay,
me?
bye.
I'm not ready. And there was this older gal in my office, and I guess I can say her name. I was like, Barb! And I went running into her office, and I told her what happened. I was like trying not to cry in the office. And I was just like, I'm overwhelmed with emotion. And so I was just like, I just don't know what to do. And, I had just found out. So I hadn't even like processed it. And she's like, write him a letter. So I'm like, okay. So I go home from work, and I'm married, and so my husband and I are gonna go to the gym, and the phone rings, and this is at like 7 o'clock at night or something, and it's my birth mom, and so she had already known for weeks, like that
Oh yeah, because
it was all approved and it was happening right from their side, so they were all excited. She was excited, and I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, I'm going to the gym. Let's plan. And so this is when we had to pay for long distance phone calls.
oh
So I gave her the 1-800 number to my office. And so the next day we scheduled a phone call, and she called me on the 800 number. I remember I was just sitting there, got my water. Oh, okay. This is weird. It was so weird to actually, you know, and just, it was so funny because I remember that her first question was like, well, what do you look like?
I'm trying to
And
explain
I'm like,
yourself over a.
kind of blonde, kind of like this. And she's like, oh, I always picture you as like dark brunette because I have a sister who was a brunette. And so she's like, oh, but my mom's blonde. And so it was funny. And then everybody else was dark, dark hair.
So
But
then you found out that you have.
so we instantly shared addresses, and then we're going to mail each other a quick envelope of photos because there's no
Yeah, there's no
email.
phone.
We weren't texting photos yet.
Right.
So I literally had to go home and like find a couple photographs of myself, put them in an envelope so she could like have a picture of me. Just we're in different states. And then I don't know, it was just weird, like hearing each other's voice and hearing how they're like. So when we talk about genetics, that's the thing that I think we should talk about. That's so funny is you think about what you are genetically versus your
Like nature versus
learned
nurture.
behaviors in your family. And so I'm a funny blend of all
Both.
the things. And so this is the interesting part. So we're not going to talk too much about the emotions probably behind all the adoption, but I think we should talk about this stuff because this is fun and interesting.
Well, yeah, I think I heard from you, or over the years, everyone
Mhm.
always said that you and your brothers looked a lot alike, and you both would be like, "That's fine and cool and all, but like,
Totally.
we're not actually
We're not genetically
related."
related.
But from like, say, the genetic standpoint, it's you grow up around people, you
Mhm.
learn expressions and the way that you react to things. So you both might, or you all might smile the same because you saw it from a baby, from your parents, and learned that that's what you do.
Mhm.
Or, all those learned behaviors that we don't even think about.
Yeah.
So it does make you look really similar to people where human eyes are trained to find similarities. So you see two people standing next to each other and they're like, oh, we're siblings. You go, okay, like I can see it, or I know from the way that you both, engage with others or talk. Sure.
Yeah.
But genetics can only influence so much of just like hair color, eye color, maybe the way your voice sounds, because that is just a building block, right? But so many things can influence genes that are turned on and off, such as like your lifestyle, your diet, the
Mhm.
food you're
Oh,
exposed
yeah,
to.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, or even like the parenting styles can also influence because we all have so many different like personalities, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the on and off of genes happens as you get older. And it can happen later in life, obviously. If you start smoking or exercising, can
Mm.
affect your genes on and off. Um,
Well, and what would you say about so when I met this is the other part of why she found my birth parents so fast is they had actually ended up getting married. So remember, they were 14. So when they were in their 20s, they married each other. So I have a full blood brother and sister,
Yeah.
which I don't think I look like. There's little things, there's little similarities, but it's weird because I don't look like them necessarily either. And I think that is like what we talk about a lot about your environment for your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so my parents, adoptive parents, were very active. Like my dad was mountain climbing and mountain biking and cross country
Yes.
skiing. So we were very active, and I was very Tom girly, and I had all brothers. So I was very like, we're riding bikes, we're, and I think that was really good for me physically. And I don't know that they necessarily had that. I think they had like different, I don't want to say sedentary, but it's like, you know what I mean?
It's very different lifestyle than what you
Different
grew up with.
familial lifestyle, and my dad was a smoker. So like I think that's changed. My birth father was a smoker. So I think that changes a lot of things for you too, right?
Yeah, it definitely can. And I always think about like you had your adoptive mom was a nurse, and then you had a very active adopted father. So a lot of that can influence, even just the way that all of you were raised. But we can go back to that you and your full blood siblings, you guys might not look very similar. Obviously, there's going to be the little things that are all the genetic, like hearing you and your mom or my grandma on the phone. All three of us can sound like each other, which is very strange that we have like the same
our
voice
voices
inclination.
Are similar,
yes.
And our voice cadence. I would say the cadence is similar, which is odd. I would have really never realized that my voice was maybe learned in utero or was more genetic with my vocal cords. Yep. But my birth mom and I and my sister, if we were to pass the phone around and change, you wouldn't know. Like we kind of had the same little thing going on.
Or I've had some people, like I've answered your phone for you and your boyfriend has been like, oh, hey, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is not Amanda. And he's like, oh, okay, sorry. But like people get confused if they hear us both on the phone because we can sound similar. I don't know if it's because also maybe the phone just also is weird, but
no, everyone's been saying that for at least that was a big thing that everyone noticed back when we met like 20 years ago. That was like a funny similarity.
Yeah.
We have some genetic traits, but I have seen things that are different by environment. And I've always been really active, like been to the gym every day and and I definitely see the difference in that to like them being in the Midwest, which is a lot different lifestyle than Colorado is one of the most active states there is.
Yeah.
Like we are doing all the things
every
all the
day.
Time.
I mean, every time I drive
walked the dog twice yesterday.
I say whenever I'm driving anywhere, there's always at least one or two people, if not more, on a warm day who are out walking their dog. Like, it's a normal thing.
It's so nice here. It's not like hot. It's not humid. There's no bugs. Like, so we are just
outside
in the sun. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about like your genetic siblings, brother and sister, they look a lot more alike. But maybe a lot of that has to do with just being in the same environment together and having the same kind of parenting, the same kind of food, just that lifestyle, and maybe exposed to different toxins or stress that you weren't. That always brings me back to like thinking about me and my brother and how I feel like we look nothing alike. And I've never had people be like, oh, I can totally see you guys as brother and sister. It's always like, I'm confused what's going on here.
It is kind of weird.
I got the very fair and he got the very dark.
She really, like when they talk about that first daughter that's supposed to look like their father, so they like the kid. Like she looked like her dad. Now she also looks like, look at straight at the camera. She looks a lot like me. There's very similar things going on here. But she does have like an echo of her dad's genes. And he was very Scandinavian.
Viking.
Big, pale,
blue-eyed
Viking, like just big guy. But there's traits in her facial features. Like the memes people make now, like, oh, what I think when people say I look like my dad.
But it is
Have
so
you seen
true.
those? Oh my gosh. But I mean, it's funny. You do, but you don't.
I look like my dad, just a very pretty girl version.
So, yeah, but like your strength and your muscle tone and your feet and like things about you are genetically clearly from his side of the family, where your brother,
It's all you.
he's all me, and he looks like my dad's birth dad's side of the family.
He does.
He really does. There's all these tall, thin, brown-haired cousins on that side that look like him.
But when you put
And
us
he
two
looks
together,
like, yeah, and I actually look a lot like my birth dad's sister, like my aunt.
I'd have to
Like
see
she
a
passed
photo
away,
again.
but I have a photo of her. I mean, it's we really look alike. It's kind of weird. It
Interesting.
kind of brought him to tears when he saw me once because she passed away, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you look like my sister." So that was kind of cute. But I see it in that family. Like I see it in our jaw. I see it in our smiles, in our face shape.
Yeah.
And they're a leaner, compactor people, like I am, and like your brother.
It's
interesting.
funny.
But your brother's also like the tallest from our circle.
Maybe Dad gave him a little height
because your dad was
sprinkled
tall.
it in a little bit.
He had a little sprinkle of that side from your side was the height, because he's significantly taller than me and Allie, but also shorter than his dad. But my birth father, I think he's only like 5'6" or 5'7".
Really?
He's not very tall.
I guess you're not very tall either, and I definitely surpassed you a while
And
ago.
my birth sister's only 5 feet tall.
Huh.
Maybe 5 feet tall. But my birth,
I don't feel like I fit into that family, at least the way on my looks. Like I feel like I look very out of place on that side. But I also feel very out of place on Dad's side too. Like I don't look like any of them either. So
Yeah.
I'm very confused.
None of the cousins look alike on that side at all. And I wouldn't say that. I mean, the siblings,
I think
no,
there's
not
some
really.
of the cousins on that side do look a lot alike from the two separate sisters. I do think they do. But I mean,
Anyway.
I will say genes are very strange. I mean, we know that disease and disorders can be turned on and turned off that families didn't even know that they had, such as type 1 diabetes can be turned on just from getting like the flu once. So that's, I don't know.
This is I don't know if this is a nice thing to point out, but can you notice like the difference between all the family members? Like if you look
versus lifestyle,
there was a lot of smokers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really changed them genetically, and not necessarily in a positive manner. Like their overall health wasn't always as great.
Well, that is
and they aren't as vibrant, healthy human beings.
Yeah.
Like, does that? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean.
No, I agree.
But you can see it. So I mean, it's something interesting to point out with how, like, what do you know about how smoking changes things genetically?
Well, just in general, any of those toxins, such as being exposed to Agent Orange, such as grandpa's, or smoking, like everything can affect the way your genes turn on and turn off, and that does pass down in generations. And it can be later on generations too, depending on which side of the chromosome you get from your parents, right? I mean, genetics in general is so interesting because it's such a modge podge of mixing. So, I mean, so much can affect it. So, like, your lifestyle could have completely affected the way that I was born if you were raised by your birth parents versus your adoptive parents, because of all the stress, anxiety, toxins, etc. And that could impact me and even all of my kids from now on, just because of you having a change in lifestyle. Or I could change my lifestyle and affect the rest of my.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
The other thing too that I always think about or I wonder about, but I don't really know, but considering if a woman has a stressful pregnancy, as in the amount of stress hormones flooding into the fetus is like going to change things about them and the way their body processes like all the stress hormones. There are a couple studies. I obviously cannot remember them off the top of my head. I'll have to find them. Do you want me to pause? Do you want to say it? But there are some studies that the
cortisol or stress hormones that a mother experiences is like permeable through the placenta.
Mm-hmm.
So it can pass through into the child. And so they've seen that it can like rewires their nervous system.
Hmm.
So, I would say you had a stressful pregnancy with me because
Mm-hmm.
of whatever my dad was, his own issues.
Yeah.
But, I was born, I had a lot of like anxiety randomly as a 5-year-old. I remember having my first like panic attack at 5. Like, I do think it can impact the way that we handle stress in a positive or a negative way. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of studies based off of like in environment can impact the pregnancy that impacts the child later on in
Mm-hmm.
life. So I think it's something to
What's
think
really
about.
what's really fascinating is for years I like studied and read about that and knew that from me having stressed for you, but I did not have the aha moment until maybe 6 years ago that, oh my gosh, my birth mom's pregnancy was probably insanely stressful for her and terrifying.
Yeah.
And that probably happened to me in utero.
Which also could have happened to me because I was a little egg inside of
Your
you.
little egg was in there getting just genetically stressed out.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
isn't that
really interesting to
fascinating to
think
know
about.
that you were all in there
I was in
already?
my
Like my
grandma's
little eggs
body.
were forming in grandma while she was stressed the heck out.
Half of me was forming in my grandma's body.
To think that genetically how we process our stress and anxiety is affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, no wonder I've probably been like having all this anxious stuff on top of then having a relatively anxious, stressful childhood from my sibling. Like I mean, I really was getting flooded for years with stress hormones without anybody addressing it or bringing it up or making it important. So I'm like,
Have you ever read the book The Body Keeps Score?
yeah.
And we talk about how like stress and trauma that you go through can affect like your body for a really long time. And a
Uh-huh.
lot of people who have been through all those things years later, when they think they've processed it and
Mm-hmm.
they're feeling healthy, they start to have chronic health problems can pop up years later after they've processed trauma because your
Mm-hmm.
body is starting to like come down to this low. So these other things start to pop up.
Mm.
Um, and that makes me like wonder about when I was younger and I started having all these celiac like gluten things.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that could be a cause from, say, grandma when she was pregnant with you or when you were pregnant with me. All those stress hormones that kind of like got flooded into me affected my genes.
Well, and I have a Irish English descent. I did the 23andMe because they didn't have a lot of their family history, so I actually was really wanting to know kind of like the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look back at a lot of Irish people, especially if they're very Irish, they have a lot of these screwed up genetic factors from famine from back
Mm.
years ago.
Hmm.
And I'm like, gosh, can that carry on even through? Like, apparently, it's very strong.
Yeah.
Like, it's a genetic. I don't want to call it a deficiency, but more of
It's
like
a modification
like
that their
for
body had to
survival or
do for,
something.
yeah, it's like the potato famine.
Or so they essentially lost probably their ability to digest wheat in famine. And that's kind of where they're saying, like I was reading about, like, this could be where celiac came from. And I'm like, what? So now I'm
Yeah.
curious. I'm going to figure out how many of my friends that have celiac have Irish descent.
Also, they kind of
Like,
like,
what's
at
happening?
least when I first started like researching celiac and kind of where it came from, like a lot of people who did come from those Nordic areas where they weren't having as much bread, it was like, just potatoes and rice.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no wheat or barley growing in those areas. Like their bodies just didn't learn how to like create those enzymes to process it.
Mm.
So is it really like a celiac disease because we're just allergic to it, or is it because our bodies are just like, we don't
No,
want to do that?
I
Like
don't
we
want
live
this.
off potatoes and vodka, okay? Like
And vodka.
potatoes, I don't know.
Meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes, like that's just what we do. We don't need.
That's why everybody just feels good when that's what they eat. And they don't eat all that. The
I just
bread
love
gives you the
potatoes.
bloat. like that your body struggles to and all the cheese and dairy.
I mean, and
You're not
add on
supposed to
top
have
today,
all
like
that much dairy.
everything is like bleached and full of pesticides. I mean, we
Yeah, if you
really shouldn't
drink
even be
cheap,
eating it
if you
anymore.
drink the cheapest wines in the world, like, and you just chug that down every night, you are just so filled with pesticides.
Well, they're
Like,
getting that,
hello,
like,
don't do that.
yeah. I mean, when I went to Europe when I was, what, 14, 15, I ate
Hmm.
gluten.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have that much of an issue. I think it was like a day of my body being like, whoa, 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 what are we doing? And it was also jet lag, so I'm sure that probably was part of it. But I had no issues.
Yeah, that was really interesting.
And I come back here, and if I get a slight little bit of gluten, I'm like breaking out in hives and have other issues.
So
So,
fascinating.
and I feel like that's a common.
Okay, so besides stress and anxiety, what other genetic things do you think with adoption that you've noticed or we could talk about?
Genetics are a great blueprint. Being exposed to even one little sickness can affect your genetics. So, I mean, being in a whole completely different environment than, say, your siblings, I don't think you guys are going to look or act exactly the same. Obviously, there are pieces to personality that are controlled by genetics, but yet again, could be things that are affected by a parenting style, you know, or just the lifestyle you're exposed to can be so so different that it does affect the way of what genes get turned on, what gets turned off, or even your own personality against a certain parenting style may act very differently. So,
what do you think you got genetically from me that you notice?
I think our voice. I feel like I hear it sometimes that we sound a lot alike. Oh, I talk to myself. And I don't know if that's a learned behavior because we both are very much like internal monologue
We should look that
constantly
up.
going. But
Yeah,
I know
I
what
think
my
that's
brother doesn't
partly
do
like
it.
you and I might actually have a little spectrum
Oh, that's probably
thing
part of
going
it.
on. And what's funny is my birth mom or my adopted mom was a nurse and still never figured some of my stuff out. Like they weren't talking about a lot of this, I don't think.
No.
It was just how you handle a cut and a broken bone, and here's your shots, and here's your sticker. Go about your merry
Well,
way.
also, like, let's say any of the spectrum disorder was
Mm-hmm.
not fully diagnosed as like on a spectrum. It was like either just really noticeable or not. And so, like, a lot of women will get diagnosed way later in life because you learn those like coping skills of, oh, this is just how I'm supposed to act. But we notice those
Is
little
it
details.
masking?
It's masking. You
Mm-hmm.
notice all the ways that people talk to each other, the way that we interact with the world,
Mm.
and you notice it from a very young age. So you might be a little quiet, and then you start to just really like, okay, I'm gonna mask it all.
They're like little mimics.
And you're not doing it on purpose. You're just mimicking. I mean,
Uh-huh. Huh.
it's a survival mechanism. It's mimicking, and women are really good at surviving. I don't know.
I'm trying to think if there's any other interesting genetic things I've noticed about us. The one thing you have I don't have is your hypermobility.
Yeah,
Like
I
your
don't know where that
joints.
came from.
I don't know where that came from.
But my brother has hypermobility too. And
you guys seem to have it most in your shoulders. Just so
it is
odd.
the shoulders.
What's going on there?
I don't know.
They both also had nursemaid's elbow. Actually, there is
Like
history
how
of that in my birth family. Nursemaid's elbow that disconnect.
it's also like a connective tissue thing. So I don't know. Maybe there's connective tissue things in your side of the family.
Disjointed, huh? Yeah, but I've not experienced it much for myself.
You're
Which
not
is interesting.
jointed. I don't know. I can't ask Dad. I don't
Double
know.
jointed. He didn't was not double jointed or anything. He was actually the least flexible human I've ever known. But that was also a result of being an offensive guard. He had no cartilage.
Yeah.
He got really banged up and he was just beat to poo.
Well, that's where I go
So
with like
he
a lot
wasn't
of.
flexible at all. I tried taking him to yoga.
I'm sure that was really.
He's essentially just trying to kneel. I'm like,
okay.
He's like, this is as far as I can go.
Well, I will say I think a lot of like my current flexibility is probably from 12 years of competitive gymnastics and
Yeah.
That's like a learned thing in your body. Muscles do become a little lax for that.
Hmm.
But because I think I had a doctor explain to me, it's like a rubber band. You know, you can stretch it over and over until all of a sudden it is going to be a lot looser. So you either
Hmm.
have to like fill up the muscle in between to kind of make it tight again, or it's going to be a lot of like strength kind of things that are lacking.
Hmm.
But the shoulders have always been there, and I know my brother has those. And you've walked in our rooms and been like,
You guys
"How are
are,
you laying like that in bed with your arm way behind your head?" Like,
it looks
I'm
like
like, "It's comfy." I
detached.
don't know.
It's like a broken Barbie sometimes.
That's the only thing that I can think of my brother and I having like really in common, but we don't really have much else except we can't grow calves, but we can grow shoulders like no one's business.
We don't have the calves in this family. None of us.
No.
Um,
I definitely like have a very different body type than you when you were my age or even younger. I've always looked very different
you're
than what
much
you
more
did.
muscular. Well, when you were really young, you kind of looked the
I
same
mean,
as me,
more
but you
like
weren't as
I think
tiny as
all
me.
little
I
kids
was
look kind of the
I was
same.
just really, really small and like I didn't have a lot of muscle when I was little.
I've
But I
always
also
had a lot of
probably
muscle.
maybe because I was anxious, just didn't eat as much. I don't know.
Maybe.
But
But I don't know what else. I don't really feel
hmm,
like we have a lot of the same stuff either. I am a good mix, I think, of like both of you guys, but I can't think of like specific things that we have like
hmm,
similar except for talking to ourselves and having an internal monologue.
resting bitch face.
Mm,
I'm sorry, we just do have it.
that is just one. That's probably learned behavior though.
Is it?
Yeah,
So did I learn it from my adopted mom?
probably. I could totally see
I
that.
could see that. She doesn't walk around smiling or anything either. I feel she had a lot of some depression, so she definitely had to force the smiles. She was
Yeah.
nice, but yeah, she was like an Eeyore. That
Not
somehow mean.
I think it kind
You
of
know what I
sounds
mean?
like
It's like that the person that's just
well,
getting by.
those facial expressions are a learned behavior for
Mm,
communicating emotions. That's what we learn from a very little baby because you're only this far away, you know, from your parent's face. And that's what
mm.
you first learn is like the smiling. Like you remember having a baby and the
Somehow
first
we're
time we
copying the
smile,
face without
it's
even
because we're
realizing.
copying it.
But
Because
we
we
don't even know that
realize
we are. Like we just
we just
it's
do
a
it. Um,
well, it's true. They say, have you seen that study of what happens? Like they did a study where they would not smile to a baby, and like the baby would get stressed out. Have you seen that article?
mm,
I was thinking you might know about it.
I don't.
They
I
did
feel like
like
I've
these
heard it,
studies
but I
like with the
can't.
baby, and they would just stop, like not react and not smile at the baby, and the baby would start to get very upset and
Was this
like
their baby or was it
stop
like a
smiling.
You know, I think this is probably a
It
really
was
old
probably was their
study
baby.
because we can't legally do things like that anymore to
Thank
kids because it
goodness.
could affect
What do you
their
mean? They were like,
mental
"What
health.
happens if we don't smile at this baby for 2 weeks straight?" And I'm like,
Yeah, they
horrible
did a lot of
study.
really like
Child's
kind of
traumatized.
traumatizing studies back in the day, and then they all got stopped because they were like, "Oh, this might have a
Oh,
lifelong impact on people. Maybe we shouldn't do it." So, I mean, I'm glad that we don't do a lot of horrible things anymore. Ethics are very important in science.
yeah. That's why they're like, it's such a fine line sometimes where they're thinking, "Oh my gosh, we need to study this to save people," but yet, and
yeah.
then they want to study it on animals. They have to study it on something so they can save people. And then they're like, "Well, can we do this to monkeys or whatever?" Because it's
But then yet
very
again, like ethics.
now you're torturing monkey.
Now
Yeah,
you're
it's
torturing animals, which
awful.
is yet again not ethical. So fine lines, you have to find them where it's still like,
I think it's best to just find the patients that are willing to try anything. They're actually going through something, and then just try stuff.
well,
Like
yeah.
when
So
they're
that's
like,
why,
they agree to it.
well, very important thing. If you ever want to get involved in case studies, definitely do it if you have the opportunity because it is such a small amount of people who actually ever join case studies. And
Mm.
some of them aren't even like they're doing anything to you. It's just like they ask you questions about what, certain things over the years. So
Yeah, I know. I know some women that take their kids are in case studies for like 7 years, where like once a year they may have to pop by a doctor or they
yeah,
may just fill out a
it's
form
like a
where they just
longevity.
tell them what's going on. And it's something that maybe happened to them at birth that they're like, "Hey, we'd like to see
How this
the results as she ages on XYZ. Would you just be in a case study? And then they maybe pay them a minor amount, but it makes them do it because it's not like a huge inconvenience.
Studies are amazing.
Mhm.
They are very limited on funds in general. So, yes, you're not going to get paid like the big bucks for doing any studies, but you are part of something of growing a knowing or finding
Yeah.
something out. So, if you have an opportunity to do it, I always say, like, go for it. Yes, some of them do go out of you do have to go out of your way a little bit, but I always think, cost versus uh,
No, it's
what are
super
you doing for
interesting.
society?
And like I think a lot of times the parents are realizing, okay, my child went through something when they're a baby or birth or whatever, and then they're also interested in keeping an eye on that and seeing what is this going to lead to in the future, and then they also have kind of the history if they were going to go back to the hospital or the doctor and be like, you made a medical error.
That
Or
or
did you handle this properly?
no, I mean for any like thing, if you have a chance and you have something that you can go and do a study, I would just do it. If you can.
I think it's a great idea.
It's great for science. I mean, how do we come up with anything if we don't
We
have
need more people in the case
participants?
studies. And case studies are just so simple generally. Sometimes you may have to go get blood draws, but that's probably the most invasive thing that they're going to do to you. I
About
mean,
it.
unless you have something, a really rare genetic condition.
Yeah. I mean, it really just depends on what it is, obviously. But a lot of the basic ones,
Yeah,
they're
look
really
look
not that
out there,
serious.
keep an eye out because you could get involved. And it's kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
you're helping advance
Science.
medical advancements, right? So why not? Well, thank you for listening. This is Matriarch Alchemy.
Bye.